Okay, I am about to hop into the 1-3 game here at the Win. Max buy-in is $500. That's what I plan to buy in for. Hope you guys enjoy. Let's get right into it. Okay, before we get started, I played for a little more than 9 hours this session and recorded 37 hands in total. Now, we're not going to discuss all 37, but more of the interesting ones of the session. Also, in these first couple of hands, I'm not really in an ideal seat for the camera, but I do change seats here in hand number 3, so let's get started. In this first interesting hand of the day, I've been playing for about 30 minutes. I'm in the small blind position and look down at a nice one, pocket jacks. The middle position player opens the action for $16, which is a little bit more than normal and pretty much screams a premium like pocket aces, kings, or ace king. It folds to the button who makes the call, and yeah, even though the MP could have some premiums here, with my hand and in this position, a squeeze is nearly 100% mandatory. Now, I think he's going to let me know if he has aces or kings with a 4-bet for sure, but generally when I raise, I like to go 3 times the big bet, plus add any additional money put in the pot, right? So here I elect to put in the squeeze for $60. The MP doesn't take too long and makes the call, and the button gets out of the way. Okay, so he called and it didn't 4-bet, so that means we're likely up against maybe a higher pocket pair up through queens, or maybe ace king or ace queen. So we're heads up to a flop, which is 8 king queen with 2 diamonds. Well, that's not ideal. I check and pretty much plan to give up to any sizable bet, and that's exactly what he does. The MP puts out about an 80% bet of $110. Yeah, that's too bad. Obviously this is a fold, and sorry to see this one go. Always nice to get jacks though. Okay, this is the last hand in this seat. We'll be moving to a spot to my left here from here on out. In this hand, I'm in the cutoff position and look down at a premium ace-king offsuit. The under the gun opens the action with the limp. The hijack limps, and as my standard open is $12 in this 1-3 game, I add the limper's bets to my open size and raise this one up to $18. Folds back around to the under the gun who makes the call, and the hijack folds. Now, given the under the gun just limped, it's not likely he's going to have any premiums, and if he did, he'd surely let me know. I'm definitely seeing a lot more limp raises though with premiums lately. Kind of seems like that's been a thing these last few months, but here he just makes the call and we're heads up to a flop, which is 8 10 10 with 2 diamonds. Okay, now given I've got the nut diamond in my hand, a c-bet is certainly in order. The under the gun checks to me, and I think about a half pot bet of $20 sounds about right, so that's what I do. I put out $20. He doesn't take too long and makes the fold, and I take this one down. Pretty quick and easy one here. That'll work. Okay, finally at a better seat at the table. We're about an hour into the session, and here I'm in the cutoff position and look down at pocket eights. There's a $6 under the gun straddle on, and the MP limps for $6. It folds to me, and as many of you guys know, I am not a limper and pretty much prefer a razor fold strategy pre-flop. Now, there are exceptions to this strategy from time to time, like maybe calling a raise from the button with like a middling pair when the under the gun was the initial raiser. But with a limp from middle position seat, a raise is definitely in order with pocket eights, so I bumped this one up to $30. However, the small blind cold calls, the under the gun straddler calls, and then the MP limp raises to $90. What the heck? Now this is a pretty light 3-bet here with all the dead money in the pot, so this should have been a raise to about $150, but 90 is pretty darn light. Now what's concerning me here, other than obviously the limp raise from early position, is the small blind's call. He called a raise from the worst seat at the table and with a few folks left to act behind too, but with a pot of about $180 and it's only 60 for me to call, that's 3-1 and pretty good odds, and either the small blind or under the gun could improve those odds a bit too with a call. So I make the call here with my eights, but both the small blind and under the gun players fold. That's okay. We get an ideal heads up situation here anyways, and we're off to a flop, which is jack 7 8 with 2 clubs. Heck yeah, middle set. The MP checks, and if he's got pocket aces, kings, or queens, or ace king, definitely want to start charging. So I put in a nice little bet of $100, and he snap jams for $201 effective. Okay, don't think he's got 9-10 suited here based on its pre-flop action. Most likely an overpair, so I snap call, and the turn is the 6 of clubs and the river's the 4 of diamonds, and he shows pocket jacks. Oh man, well, guess I was getting it in regardless. Just an unfortunate situation here, man. Okay, this is about 15 minutes later, and I've added on for $300. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at ace queen of clubs. That'll work. The under the gun player limps. It folds to the button who raises to $15, and yep, a 3-bet is a coming. So I actually have a bit of a misclick here and accidentally raised this one up to $40, and I meant to put out a bet of $50, but can't take it back now. The under the gun makes the call, and the button calls as well. Well, if they were calling 40, odds are they probably would have called 50 as well. So we're 3 ways to a flop, which is 10 10 ace with 2 spades. All right. Now a 10 is likely going to be in their ranges a bit more than mine, but as 2 of them are accounted for on the board, odds are they don't have one in their hand. Now if any of them have ace king in their hand, it'd likely be the button given the under the gun limped pre-flop. We didn't see a limp re-raise. Now given I'm out of position in a multi-way pot, I make the check, but the under the gun puts out a bet of $75, which is a little more than 60% of the pot. Now if the button calls here, I think ace king would still be in his range, but that doesn't happen as he lets it go. Now what do you do here? If the under the gun does have a 10, I think a call and evaluate is fine, but does he have something like ace 5 suited or ace jack? Or does he have a couple of spades with like king jack of spades and his betting his draw? If he has either of those, I think a raise is the right thing to do, but given the 10s out there, I like to make the call here and evaluate on the turn. The turn is the 8 of spades, so that completes the front door flush draw. I check and the under the gun checks as well. Now, would he check a 10 here even though the front door spades came in? It's possible, but I'm thinking not likely. I don't think he'd check ace 10 suited, and there's only one combo of that with ace 10 of hearts, and he's not checking a flush either, so he's either got some combo of ace or maybe 9-10 or 10 jack suited, but I'm leaning towards an ace though. So we're off to a river, which is the 7 of clubs, pretty big blank. No way he's got ace king, and odds are he doesn't have a 10, so I think I want to bet here and target something like ace jack or ace 5 suited maybe. So I put out a bet of $200 and he snap calls. I show and he shows ace king of hearts. What the heck? Did not see that one coming. He limp called pre-flop too. I tell you, I just can't catch a break here. Okay, we're now about 10 minutes later, and I've added on for another $300, so we're in for a total of $1,100. Here I'm in the middle position seat and look down at queen 10 of hearts. It folds to me and I open the action for my standard $12. Cutoff makes the call and the button raises to $50. Folds back around to me and he could be raising pretty light here given his position, and given I'm 40% of the way to a royal, I make the call and the cutoff folds. Now, although he could have been raising light, the premiums are still not out of the question. We're heads up to a flop, which is jack 7 deuce with 2 hearts. Yes, sir, that will work. I check to the pre-flop aggressor with the intention to put in a nice little check raise if he bets, and that's exactly what he does. And he puts out a bet of $30, which is pretty small in comparison to the pot. So that tells me he may not be too excited about his hand, and any raise might get this one through. Okay, so what's the right sizing here? Definitely raising with my flush draw, and 3 times 30 is 90, but if I can get him to fold right now, maybe size up a little bit. So I size up and put out a raise to $100. The dealer counts it out, and as soon as he's finished, the button folds pretty quickly, and I take this one down. That'll work. Okay, this is a few hands later. Here I'm on the button and look down at queen 8 of hearts. The under the gun opens the action for $11. The low jack makes the call and it folds to me. Now this is one of those spots where I think a call is okay given we're in the best seat at the table, but generally with this hand I would fold it for most every other position, but I make the call here and the small blind makes the call as well. All right, we've got 4-way action, which is something I'm a little more familiar with playing in Texas mostly. And we're off to a flop, which doesn't get much better. 8-8-4 with 2 clubs, but the small blind leads for $20. That will definitely work. The under the gun makes the call and the low jack folds. Okay, the small blind for sure has to be on a club draw, and the under the gun likely has some overs, and given this information, I think a squeeze is 100% mandatory here. I want to charge any draw, so I bump it up to $80. 3 times the big bet plus the additional money that was put in the pot. Small blind folds pretty quickly, and the under the gun thinks about this for a bit and lets it go, and I take this one down. I'm guessing he could have had something like pocket 10s or jacks, something like that, but a couple of folds works for me as well. Happy to get what I can. Okay, we're now a couple of hours into the session, still trying to dig myself out of this early hole. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at a nice one, ace-king offsuit. The end of the gun limps, and here we go. The MP limps, the cutoff raises to $12, which again is very light. The button makes the call, the small blind calls, and oh boy, we've got a whole bunch of dead money into this thing. So what do I raise this thing to? All right, well, let's see. 12 times 3 is 36, plus the 2 other $12 callers, which is right around 60. Then we've got a couple of limpers, so I should raise this thing to around $66, but I chose 60 in the moment. The under the gun folds, which is good. No limp raise from him. The MP folds, the cutoff folds, the button makes the call, and the small blind folds. Okay, so the button double flatted here, which makes me think he's got some sort of low to middling pocket pair. Maybe ace jack offsuit or ace 5 suited, something in that range. We're heads up to a flop, which is 7-8-3 rainbow. Okay, well, not very ideal, but I do have a couple of overs here. Now when heads up post flop and I plan to lead, I generally like to go 1/3 pot sizer out, so I put out a C bet of $55. The button doesn't take too long and makes the call. Now, I'm not really getting much information from him yet, but I think I want to continue to barrel here if a disconnected card here comes on the turn. The turn is the jack of diamonds. Yes, that opens the door for a backdoor diamond draw, but I'm not really too worried about that. Even though that jack is there and it's possible he has something like ace jack, but but I'm still feeling like he's got a low to mid pocket pair here given the pre-flop action. So I continue with my story of a premium overpair and put out a bet of $100. He thinks on this for a solid 30 seconds and makes the call. Gosh dang it. Does he have a jack here? Does he have an ace or king jack? He definitely is telling the story that he does. Highly doubtful he'd call my turn bet with a middling pocket pair given the story I've represented so far. And the river is the jack of clubs. Well, now it's less likely he's got a jack, but I pretty much give up here and check, and he checks back. I show my ace high and he turns over. Pocket sixes. Man, I tell you, what on earth is he doing calling that turn bet? I mean, if I had triple barreled here, would he have called? Given that turn call, it's certainly possible, but man, lose another one here and really struggling this session. Okay, we're now about 45 minutes later. Been a bit since I've played a hand. Here I'm on the button and look down at another nice one, ace queen of spades. There's a $6 under the gun straddle on and the MP limps. Folds to me, and of course this is a raise, so I raise this one up to $30, but again have to be careful with the potential limp raise from the guy first to act. It folds to the under the gun straddler who also folds, and the MP makes the call. Okay, could be up against a couple of jacks, 10s, 9s, or maybe like king jack suited. We're heads up to a flop, which doesn't get much better. Ace, queen, deuce, rainbow. My goodness, what do you do here? No way he connected at all with this board, and both of those cards might be pretty scary for him. Now, unless he's got king jack, don't think I'm going to get much out of him. Regardless, he checks, and I go ahead and take the aggressive route and put out a bet of $30. He doesn't take too long and lets it go. Well, at least I got 30 out of him, so that'll work. Okay, this is a couple of rotations later. Here I'm in the cutoff position and look down at king jack of diamonds. The under the gun opens the action for $15. It folds to me, and we're already in an interesting spot here. With an under the gun open and to an amount that's a little bit higher than normal, it's very probable he's got some premiums here. I think a case could be made to fold, especially if there was a 3-bet in front, but there's not, and we're in a pretty late position, so I think a call is the right move here, so that's what I do. And the small blind calls as well. Okay, we're 3 ways to a flop, and the small blind checks dark. The flop is 4-7 king rainbow. Well, that works. Given there's a king on the board and one in my hand, odds are the under the gun doesn't have one, but definitely not out of the realm of possibility. Now the small blind checked and the under the gun checks as well. So does he have queens here or maybe 10s? I think I want to put out a little value-y pro bet here. So I put out a bet of $25. Small blind thinks about it for a bit and lets it go. And the under the gun makes a pretty quick call. I think he would have bet the flop if he had a king here. So I'm likely in pretty good shape. The turn is the 9 of clubs. So a backdoor club draw is still alive, but not too worried about that. The undergun checks again, and I think queens might call a half pot bet, maybe, but gotta build the pot a bit in the event he is stuck on queens or maybe is on a flush draw. So I put out a bet of $55 and he thinks for a couple of seconds or so and lets it go. That's all right. Won about $50 here or so. Still trying to build my stack back up, see if I can get back in Profitville. Okay, this is now about 30 minutes later. Just returned from a lunch break and posted my missed blind. Here I'm in the low jack position and look down at 6-7 of diamonds. It folds to me, and this is definitely at the lighter end, but openable from this position. So I put out the extra $9 and open for $12. The cutoff questions my open a bit, and I think it's because he might have thought that I limped, but I didn't, and the dealer appropriately said that it was my post. And he raises this one to $35. It quickly folds back to me, and given we'd be heads up, I think either a call or a fold is okay here, but I make the call, looking to make something happen. We're heads up to a flop, which is deuce, deuce, 10 with 2 diamonds. Okay, not a bad flop at all. Now he's representing either some overpairs or something like ace king, ace queen. I checked a Mr. Pre-flop aggressor man, and he continues with a 1/3 bet size of $25. Definitely not going anywhere with my diamond draw, so I make the pretty standard call here. I guess a case could be made to put in a raise here from time to time, but I make the call. The turn is the 10 of clubs. Well, that changes things a bit. I check, and he now puts out a bet of $40. A bit light in comparison to the pot, but at this point, I'm of course losing any 10 or any ace. I don't think he's got a deuce with that pre-flop 3-bet, but yeah, gotta fold this one, so I'll let this one go. Okay, in this hand, I'm in the hijack position and look down at Jack 8 of clubs. It folds to me, and man, this is another in-between spot here, but if you look at most pre-flop opening charts, this one is in it from the hijack position, and I open the action here for $12. The button makes the call, and the big blind calls as well. Now, both of their ranges are going to be pretty wide from these positions, but at least we know they aren't going to be holding any of the premiums, and we're off to a flop, which is 5-4-10 rainbow. Well, not much going on here except for some backdoor possibilities. Big blind checks, and this flop will most definitely hit their ranges a bit bit more than mine, so I make the check as well, and the button also checks. Now, if the button hit something, he for sure would have bet here, but the big blind was checking to me as the preflop aggressor and really could have hit this board, so I think he's probably going to be the strongest here. We're off to a turn, which is the 7 of clubs. Well, that's interesting. I've now improved to a backdoor flush draw and double gutter. Big blind checks, which is good, and tells me he may not have actually hit this thing. With all my outs here, bet is nearly 100% certainty, so I put out a bet of $20, a little more than half the pot, and both the button and big blind make the call. What on earth could they have here to make the call? Maybe something like ace-6 or ace-5 or maybe a couple of clubs. And we're off to a river, hoping for a club, 6 or 9, and it's the ace of diamonds. Oh man, that's probably the worst card in the deck. Yep, I'm done with this thing. Big blind checks, I check, and the button now bets $35. Big blind folds and I fold as well. Tough luck on this one. Okay, we're now a few rotations later, and I've added on for another $100. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at King Jack of spades. Folds all the way to the button, who opens the action for $12. Small blind gets out of the way, and I think this is a really good spot for a raise. He's likely going to be very light opening from that position, probably opening more than half of the hands available, but I elect to make the call here with the intention to check raise any flop that has any sort of connection to my hand, or it could be scary for him based on his range. So we're heads up to a flop, which is 6 King 5 with 2 hearts. Well, that works. I check, hoping that he puts out a bet, and he doesn't let me down and puts out a bet of $16. Yep, check raise, here we come, and I put out a nice little raise to $45. Looks like he doesn't seem that interested and lets it go. Well, at least I got something out of him, so that'll work. Okay, this is a few hands later. Here I'm in the hijack position and look down at a nice one, pocket tens, both of the red variety. There's a $6 under the gun straddle on. It folds to me, and pretty much the standard open when there's a straddle is $20, so that's what I open here for. The button makes the call, but the big blind evidently likes what he has and raises this one up to $60. The under the gun straddler gets out of the way, and again, another light raise here. It's only 40 into a pot of a little more than 100 or so, and could be more if the button sticks around, so I make the call. Tens are a little too strong to fold here anyways, and the button folds. So we get an ideal situation here, heads up to a flop, which is 9-3-3 rainbow. Pretty darn good flop for tens. Big blind puts out a tiny C bet of $30, which is what, like 20% of the pot? That tells me he may not be too sold on his hand, and I of course make the call. You know, bet sizing is a pretty big tell at these stakes. The turn is the 6 of spades. Shouldn't really change much. It does open a backdoor spade draw, but again, not really too concerned about that. Big blind continues, and this time for a bet of $55 to about a fourth of the pot. I just don't think he'd squeeze pre-flop with something like ace-3 suited or king-3 suited. I mean, I guess he could have pocket nines, but with this bet sizing, pretty darn unlikely. I make the call here again, and we're off to a river, which is the jack of hearts. He continues and puts out the same bet amount of $55 again, and that is a huge tell. When someone bets the same amount, they are definitely not too proud of their hand. Now, this is less than 20% of the pot here, and I think if he had something like ace-jack, he'd likely bet a whole lot more than 20% of the pot. Should be pretty good here, so I make the call. Big blind shows 7-6 of clubs. I show my tens and take this one down. Well, I guess if you're gonna bluff, probably should be something a bit more than 20% of the pot. Thank you, sir, for keeping me in this one. Okay, this hand's not too much later. Here I'm in the small blind position and look down at another nice one, pocket jacks. The straddle is not on, and the action folds all the way to the cutoff, who opens for $10. The button gets out of the way, and yep, a 3-bet is a coming, so I raise this one up to $30. Big blind lets it go, and the cutoff makes a pretty quick call. So now we can reel out aces, kings, and probably ace-king suited, as he didn't 4-bet here. We're heads up to a flop, which is not very ideal. King, ace, 5 rainbow. I check, and the cutoff puts out a bet of $20, about a third of the pot. Can't quite fold yet with these jacks, so I make the call. But if the turn is a blank and he continues barreling, just don't think I can stick around. The turn is the deuce of diamonds. Yep, doesn't get much more blanky than that. I check again, and he continues now for a bet of $55. Yeah, too bad with these jacks, but gotta let it go, so I lay this one down. Well, these hands just keep getting better. Pocket tens 2 hands ago, jacks last hand, and here I'm in the low jack position and look down at pocket queens. Heck yeah. The action folds to me, and I open for my standard $12. Cutoff makes the call, and the small blind calls as well. Okay, can't gather too much information from them quite yet. We're 3 ways to a flop, which is king 6-3 with 2 hearts. Gosh dang it, darn king. The small blind checks, and my queens are just a bit too strong, and I think a c-bet here might whittle the field down a bit, so I put out a continuation bet of $25. The cutoff lets it go, and the small blind makes the call. Okay, so does he have a king here with something like king jack or king 10, or he could be sticking around with something like a6 or a couple of hearts? The turn is the deuce of hearts, so now I've got a backdoor queen eye heart draw here. Small blind checks, and I think I want to see a free card here on the river. Right now there's just a lot that can beat me, but could he have something like king jack or king 10 of hearts? Certainly a possibility. The river is the ace of spades. Man, I tell you, small blind now leads for $75, and you know, I'm not beating much here. Any king or ace or a couple of hearts beats me here, so I'll let this one go. Man, too bad with these queens. Okay, this is the very next hand. Here I'm in the middle position seat and look down at 8-9 of spades. This is openable from this position, so I open the action with a few red chips, but announce a bet of $12. The hijack makes the call and everyone else folds, so we're heads up to a flop, which is 6-7-4 with one spade. Well, that works. Open ender and a backdoor spade draw. Yes, I'm first to act, but with all this equity, gotta start building the pot, so I put out a continuation bet of $15. The hijack doesn't take too long and makes the call, so what could he have here? A couple of overs? Maybe bottom pair with like ace 4. Well, we're off to a turn, which is the 3 of spades. Okay, backdoor spade draw is still alive, and I think I want to continue here. Just too many cards that can improve my hand. This time I size up a bit, about 2/3 of the pot, and put out a bet of $40. The hijack doesn't take too long and lets it go, so I take this one down. Pretty quick and easy. That'll work. Okay, folks, this hand's nearly 30 minutes later, but a doozy. Here I'm in the cutoff position and look down at ace 10 of clubs. The under the gun opens the action for $15. It folds to me, and yeah, even though the under the gun opened here and for a bit bigger amount than normal, I think I want to raise this one up with my roll of flush draw, so I bump this one up to $45. Now this raise signifies some significant strength as I 3-bet the under the gun player. Folds back around to him and he makes the call. Okay, unlikely he's got aces or kings, but pocket queens or jacks is certainly a possibility. We're heads up to a flop, which doesn't get much better. 8 king jack with 2 clubs, and holy smokes, a gut shot royal flush draw. Man, I'm mostly kidding when I say I want to raise pre-flop with a royal flush draw, but man, this is getting really close. The other gun checks, and what on earth do you do here? I flopped the world, and I almost want to check to see if that queen of clubs wants to make an appearance, but any club will really do the trick here. I think I need a bet though, and I put out about a half pot bet of $50. He takes a look at his cards and lets it go. Oh man, well, that's okay, but dang, probably should have checked though. Fun hand. Okay, this hand's about 10 minutes later. Here I'm in the low jack position and look down at queen jack offsuit. Yep, this one is not in many pre-flop opening charts and relatively weak from this position, but I open it up nonetheless for my standard $12. The cutoff makes the call and the big blind calls as well. Okay, so we're likely up against a couple of suited connectors, small pocket pairs, or maybe some weak aces. We're 3 ways to a flop, which is jack 5 ace with 2 hearts. Okay, middle pair here in our backdoor queen eye heart draw. Big blind checks, and I think I want to continue here with my equity, so I'll put out a continuation bet of $20. The cutoff folds pretty quickly and the big blind makes the call. So what could he be calling here with? A couple of hearts, an ace, or maybe a weaker jack? The turn is the ace of spades, so that means it's much less likely he's got an ace in his hand, given 2 of them are accounted for on the board. He checks, and I think I want to continue here, and I'll put out about a 60% bet of $45. Want to charge any hard draws or weaker jacks, and he doesn't take too long and lets it go, and I take this one down. Another quick one. That'll work. Okay, this is a couple of hands later. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at king 10 of clubs. All right, another couple of suited broadways here. The MP opens the action for $15. The low jack makes the call and it folds to me, and I think either a raise or a call is fine here. If I had a little bit of a better king, I think a 3-bet would be in order, but my king is a little bit on the weaker side and I make the call. Now the MP could have some premiums here, and the low jack maybe like some suited broadways or connectors. We're 3 ways to a flop, which is ace deuce 3 with 2 clubs. Alrighty, nut flush draw, that works for me. I check with the intention to raise any bet here with my draw. However, the MP checks and hopefully the low jack puts in some money, and he does. He bets $15, and yep, a 3-bet, here we come. So I raise this thing up to $45. The initial raiser in the middle position seat gets out of the way, and the low jack makes the call. Does he have an ace or a couple of clubs or maybe a middling pair? The turn is the 4 of hearts. That brings in a one-liner to a straight, but I think I want a double barrel here. Something that's telling me he may have something like pocket 7s or 8s. If he does have a 5, I think he's going to let me know. So I put out a bet of $60, and the low jack couldn't fold quick enough, and I take this one down. Okay folks, this is quite a while later, maybe an hour or so. Here I'm on the button and look down at king 10 offsuit. The MP opens the action for a whopping $7. Yeah, given my position in this bet sizing amount, I think I want to call pretty wide here, so that's what I do. And the big blind calls as well. Given the MP's bet sizing, he's likely not going to be that strong, and we're 3 ways to a flop, which is king ace king rainbow. Well, that certainly works. Big blind checks, the MP checks, and you know, I'm generally a proponent of betting when you've got something in these stakes, but when you're pretty darn nutted, sometimes you need to let other folks catch up a bit, so I make the check here. The turn is the 3 of spades, so we've got a full rainbow board here. Big blind checks, and now the MP bets $15, and don't really want to raise this one up and induce a fold here. Want to get as many streets of value as I can, so I make the call and the big blind folds. The turn is the deuce of spades. Shouldn't really change much unless he's got 4 or 5, and that's pretty unlikely. The MP now bets $25, about half the pot, and yep, a raise is in order. Now, does he have something like pocket sixes, and what amount would he call? I decide on a raise to $75 here, and he actually thinks on this for a bit, but lets it go. Well, that'll work. Won something here, and glad I checked the flop on this one. Okay, in this hand, I'm in the hijack position and look down at 6-7 of spades. The low jack is a new player and opens the action for $10. Now, he bought in for like $200, $250 or so I want to single him out. Good chance he's a relatively weak player, so I bump this one up to $30. Folds back around to the low jack, who makes the call. Okay, we're heads up to a flop, which is 7-9-3 with 2 clubs and no spades. The low jack checks, and with my middle pair, I think I want to size up a bit here, see if I can get him out of the hand right now. So I put out a bet of $50, and he is not contemplating a fold, but a raise, and bumps this one up to $150. Okay, did not expect that. Now this is a pretty decent raise and tells me he may not be too much of a fish or tight with his money. And with the 2 clubs out there, I think he's either got pocket 9s, 10s, or jacks, something like that. Yeah, not sticking around now, and I let this one go. Here I'm on the button and look down at a pretty one, ace queen of diamonds. The action folds to me and I throw out 3 red chips but verbalize $12. The small blind makes the call and the big blind calls as well. So we've got 3-way action to a flop, which is 10-8-7 with 2 diamonds. Yep, that'll work. The blinds check to me and no question money is going into this thing, so I put out a C bet of $20, but both the small and big blind players make the call. Now I guess that's not unusual given the board and their positions. They could be on a straight draw or could have connected either with one of those cards out there. We're off to a turn, which is the 6 of spades. The blinds check again to me, and yeah, I don't really have anything. I would like to see a free river card, so I make the check. And the river is a pretty unconnected king of hearts. Well, darn. Don't have anything but ace high here. The blinds check, and I check as well. Small blind shows 10-5 of hearts. I muck, and the big blind mucks as well. Man, such a pretty pre-flop hand gone to waste. Okay, I've now been playing for a solid 9 hours. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at pocket 10s. There's a $6 under the gun straddle on, and the cutoff opens the action for $25, which is a little bit higher than normal when there's a straddle. Small blind makes the call, and yep, even though the cutoff opened a bit higher, this is an excellent spot for a squeeze, so I bump this one up to $105. Now this is a pretty large raise in these stakes, so if anyone calls here, I've got to be very careful. The cutoff does in fact make the call. Yeah, he's probably got something like queens or maybe even pocket jacks. Small blind folds and we're heads up to a flop, which is 5-Jack-8 with 2 hearts. Well, don't really like that one. I check and the cutoff now snap jams for $265 effective. Well, no way I can stick around, so I'll let this one go. Dang. Okay folks, this is about 15 minutes later in the last recorded hand of the session. Here I'm on the button and look down at Queen Jack offsuit. Folds to the cutoff who limps, and yep, with that one limper, gonna keep my same opening strategy, and I raise this one up to $15. Small blind makes the call and the cutoff calls as well. So we've got 3-way action to a flop, which is 4-8-5 with 2 diamonds. Small blind checks, the cutoff checks, and I really only have some overs and backdoor possibilities, and I make the check as well. Turn is a good one though, the jack of clubs. Checks to me again, and it seems like they're not too interested in this thing. Plus, got to start building this pot up a bit with my top pair, so I put out a bet of $25. Small blind thinks about this for a bit and makes the call, and the cutoff lets it go. So what could the small blind have here? A couple of diamonds? You'd think he'd lead with some diamonds or even a jack since it was checked through on the flop. Does he have an 8 with like a suited connector maybe? The river's the deuce of clubs. Shouldn't really change much unless he's got ace-3 and called the turn with a gutter draw. He checks again, and I think I'm likely pretty good here unless he does have a jack, but king jack or ace jack is pretty much the only thing that's going to beat me here. And given that he checked, he's acting like he doesn't have one, so I put out a bet of $30 and he makes the call. I show my queen jack and he turns over ace jack offsuit. What the heck? Man, yet another cooler. Man, that was a rough session. Started at about 8:20 in the morning, finished about 5:35 p.m. In for a total of 1,200, out for 208. Just kept getting coolered. A little bit tilted at the moment. You know, I felt like I played a little bit too passive there at the end. Another rough session. You know, it's okay. I'm gonna keep battling. I'm gonna fight back. And thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed.